Alright folks, hope you're doing well. I was just sitting here and what came to me was that you can't teach against who you are. Well, for examples, I've spoken about people like Manuel and the previous leader of the Pentecostal church, or Jeff, the leader of the River Church. Can they really teach about some of us should be pastors, some of us should be teachers, etc., etc. Can they talk about that? If they're living in a way that they are the teacher, the pastor, the protector, the worship leader, etc., 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 then the answer is no. They can't teach about some of us should be this, some of us be this, because they're basically living and basically saying, they are everything. How can they say they are everything and teach that we should be this or this or this or this or this? They can't. They cannot teach it. The church has been bowing down to the Bible colleges and the understandings of the Bible colleges for way too long now. This is why we're in the situation that we're in with regards to churches. Because of how these people are trained. And the fact these people are trained to believe that they can be everything. And that if they're going to a church that doesn't have a pastor, or doesn't have a teacher, or doesn't have a worship leader, then they can be everything in that church. Okay. If you look at the Bible, does it look like the Lord had a massive ego? And talking about himself, about he's everything, everything, everything. No. No. He was living as a servant for us. He was pointing to the Father, not himself. And he had a huge problem with anyone who had an ego or had an attitude or believed himself to be anything above his station. We see it in the Bible all the time. Certainly in his dealings with people, certainly the apostles. He was quickly having to shove them down when they tried to rise up above their stations, which was quite often. It is human nature for people to do that, to want power. I was watching something the other day. It was at 1923. And they were talking about human nature, and they were talking about the fact that in small, tiny civilizations, you could have no government because everyone will help each other. But if there's a lot of people, you need a government because the person who has more muscles will beat everyone, will have the power and kill people to have all the power. Or if someone is clever and want all the power, then they would take all the power because they're clever and they can know how to do that. So we need a government to stop that. But obviously, even with a government, people want power and they use the government to have all the power. To take all the power. Yeah, that's true. But in the church, it's the same thing. People want power. That's the point. People want power. And they know if they go to the Bible colleges, then after a few years, they have a lot of power. Because they go to a church and that church will say, oh, you can be everything if you want. And then they're everything and they've got all the power in the church. Yeah. As I said yesterday, the stupidity of all of that is that you're called to do a job. God has offered you a job. Not all the jobs, a job. Or maybe a few jobs. Because, if you've done your job, then God will offer you another job. If you do that job as well, then God will offer you another job. But you have to do your job first. When one job is done completely, then maybe you'll have another job. Maybe. That's only a maybe. Because maybe you only have one job to do. And retire after that. And just be a son. Because you've done your job. That's possible. Yeah. But as I said, if you're doing other people's jobs, then you're stopping the other people to be blessed by doing their jobs. You're taking their blessing off them. Because you want all the blessing yourself. What I said about Jeff, Alex said, he said to Jeff, can you be my spiritual father? And Jeff said yes. That's a blessing. And it wasn't his blessing. He nicked that blessing from someone else. So when he's being in front of God, when he dies, he's a thief. It's not just him. I'm using that because I've talked about that before. So I'm using that because it's not the first time I'm talking about that, and I heard it from Alex, so I know that Alex said that happened. So so therefore it's truth. Well, from Alex's truth. So and actually when he said that, a lot of people in that meeting said it was the same with them. They asked the same question to Jeff and he said yes. Well, did I ask him that for me to be my spiritual father? No, No. No. Have I ever asked anyone to do that? Any human? No. But as I say, if you think you're the pastor but you're not the pastor, then the real person who should be the pastor can't do that. Because you're there. If you think you're the teacher but you're not the teacher, then the teacher who should be doing that, can't do it. Because you're there. So as I said, you're basically taking people's jobs and want all the blessing from that yourself. As I said yesterday, everything you're doing is worth nothing. Nothing at all. It's worth nothing. And actually, most of the people who are doing that, when they look at their fruit, the real fruit, they can see nothing. And basically, it makes them older. And it's killing them. Because that's not their job. So they have to work harder than the real person whose job that is. If it's your job, it would be easy. Absolutely easy. If it's your job, it would be absolutely easy. Because, God has been training you for that job. So therefore, it would be easy for you. But for someone else who's not the right person for that job, it's impossible. They can't do it. They have to work so hard to keep things, as they were when they took the job. And they know they're losing. They know that. They're losing what they're doing. They're not winning at all. They know that. They can see that they're losing. But they think, if I do this, well, if I still do this and keep doing it, then maybe one day God will change things completely. No. Well, because, I've said about, you need to change what you're doing. I've said that before. Well, because obviously, if you're doing the same thing, in the same place, in the same way, every time, and nothing's happened, why do you really think that God will, change everything when you're doing that one day? Because you're doing the right thing? No. Well, a lot of people in church thinks they're doing something that's not ready yet. So therefore, if they keep doing it, then maybe one day the church should be ready, or everyone will be ready for what they're doing. Okay? So basically you're saying you're wasting your time and other people's time by doing that for years and years and years and years and years. Why don't you listen to God and do what He wants you to do now? To have fruit now. Yeah. But if it's not your job, it doesn't matter what you do. The only way you can sort it out is stop doing that job. And let the person who's been trained by God to do that job, do that job. Yeah. Because it will never work if it's not your job. It will never work. Well, if you look at the people I've talked about, Jeff and the other one, if one of the things they are doing is actually their job, then everything else they're doing is making their job so harder. Because, they're supposed to have maybe one job, and have all that time to do that job, but they're doing everything as well, so therefore less time to do that job, much less time to do that job, and all the stress from everything else will make your job harder. So obviously do your job only, because that's the point of that. If you're doing other jobs, then if you need 10 hours each day to do your job, and you're doing 10 jobs that need 10 hours, can you do it properly? Can you do those jobs properly? No, because we've only got 24 hours each day. Even if you're doing 4 jobs that need 10 hours for each job each day, you're knackered. If you're doing 2 jobs that need 10 hours each day, then okay, you've got 4 hours each day to sleep, to eat, to rest. Is that enough? No. No, do your job, but only your job. That's the reason. If you've got one job, it could be a massive job that could change everything for everyone. It could change everything for everyone if you do your job properly, and only that job. Yeah. 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 Well, thankfully, that's not a real situation, I don't think, because obviously, the person who has that job that would change everything for everyone will only focus on that job because it's too important to lack it. So there you go. The people in church who want to do 3 jobs or 4 jobs, they're not worth anything, and even their proper job is not really worth anything. So if they're mucking it up, doesn't matter. That's the point. If they're mucking it up, it doesn't really matter, does it? Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter to them, so should it matter to God? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the reality is it does matter to God, and it always will matter to God. But God has no power to force people to do what they should be doing. And if the people in church want the leadership they have and want to stick with that leadership, then God says, okay. Same as the people in the past, the Jews wanted a king, and after a few 100 years, God said, okay. And it wrecked them completely. It wrecked the relationship with God. There you go. Oh dear. Be a blessing. Be blessed. Speak to you later. God bless. Bye bye.